Hello, everybody. What the flick and what the fright? We are back talking about some of the best horror movies of the 21st century so far. And we are back with the inimitable Clarke Wolfe, who is going to take us in and tell us a little bit about the Babadook.
Oh, this is so good. This is one of my favorites. So really a breakout hit in 2014. And from writer-director Jennifer Kent, starring Essie Davis in the title role. This is a movie that got a lot of attention and a lot of praise for being a truly classy horror film, but still packing a really big punch. And it is absolutely one of my favorites.
Let's take a look.
Where'd you get this?
On the shelf.
If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. Nothing bad's gonna happen, Sam.
Did you think that about my dad before he died?
He sees things as they are, that one.
You can't get rid of the Babadook.
You can bring me the boy. You can bring me the boy. You can bring me the boy.
Give us your best Babadook.
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 Yeah.
What's really cool about the
That's
Babadook, there's a lot of things that are really cool about
Yes.
the Babadook, but one of the things that it has managed to do that a lot of other horror movies have failed to do lately is give us a new boogie person.
Sure, yeah, and it's interesting too because I think, gosh, he's such a great looking character that I think a lot of times if audiences hear the hype and then they go watch the movie, they will sort of be a little disappointed that maybe he's not in it more.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I'm of two minds about this because the first time I saw it, admittedly, I wanted a little bit more Babadook. But then the second time I saw it, knowing what to expect, I was so emotionally invested in the story that it just knocked the wind out of me.
Yeah.
And when I rewatched it this week, I found myself sort of in the middle. I still am so emotionally invested in the story. I love this film. I love the character study. And Essie Davis, her performance in this movie is truly remarkable, but I still wanted more Babadook.
I appreciate that. Essie Davis, there was some talk at the time that she might, be Oscar nominated for it, and it's a shame she wasn't because this is one of the most anxious, accurate depictions of anxiety that I've ever seen in any medium. And she nails it from beginning to end, and it's because it's about that. It's about a woman whose husband dies while she's en route to the hospital to give birth to their son. And now she is a single mother, and it's a high-maintenance child, and she is just upset all the time, and it just keeps getting worse. And the film has this kind of plausible deniability about it, where you can say the Babadook is a literal creature, or if you want, potentially, you can say that it is all a metaphor, an allegory, a figment of her imagination to express her own horrible feelings towards her own child. And I think that makes it work. I think it is all the Babadook. There's a lot of great subtle digs to it. There's this shot of Essie Davis in bed from overhead, and the lamps are the eyes of the Babadook, and you realize she is the Babadook, like right there. But you're right. But it's interesting is that even though the Babadook isn't in it that much, it has taken on this life of its own, and people have appropriated it, and they have their images of the Babadook everywhere. He's in memes, he's everything, and it's so interesting that this is the boogie person that people went to after Slender Man.
Yeah.
And after a big heyday in horror where just every horror franchise created a new character that we would rally behind. Jason, Chucky, Freddy, etc.
Yeah.
I think the connection is just so primal.
Yeah, and I also think too that people, whether they realize it or not, are identifying and tapping into what he represents. And when I was rewatching the film, I was struck by the emotional labor that is on display. It's something that people are really not talking about a lot, but are starting to talk about more. The idea that women, whether they are mothers or not, are often provide emotional labor that they are not compensated for. So, when you rewatch the movie, not only is she taking care of Samuel, her son, who is high maintenance and who clearly has something going on with him, but in addition to that, she's taking care of her elderly neighbor, and she is there listening to her sister and her sister's high profile or high, champagne problems, essentially.
And she's a nurse, so she's taking care of people
That's
every
right.
day as well, and no one is taking care of her.
That's exactly right. And so,
Nobody.
of course, the break is going to come.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that it kind of creates this sort of shift after a while. It's almost like Wes Craven's New Nightmare, where you realize there are two horror movies going on.
Yes.
There's the mother all of a sudden finding out their child is being attacked by Freddy Krueger, but if you look at it from the other perspective, here's also this child whose mother doesn't believe him yet. And so they're both going on simultaneously. So for a long time, you're sympathetic with Essie Davis's character. And then by the end, she has gone so far down this horrible psychological rabbit hole that now, even though the child was frustrating
Yes.
at times, and you sense her frustration, he is the victim and he's living with an abusive mother.
And that's right on, because at the end of the day, it's such a, I think it's truly an exploration of motherhood and being a parent. The idea that you for better or for worse, are tasked with caring for this life. And, what does that mean? What effect will that have on your life? And you do realize that as the film progresses, watching her instincts kick in. One of the things that I love about this movie is I don't believe she ever tells Samuel that she loves him.
Yeah.
And that is a different kind of horror and tragedy.
There's this great moment where he's starting to really suffer and there's no food in the house and he's talking to her and she's in bed and he says, "I love you," and she's like, "Great." She just cannot handle it. It's kind of like in that movie We Need to Talk About Kevin, when you realize that she never really has physical contact with her child, and there is this connection that is never there.
Well, and exploring too the idea of the symbolism between losing her husband and almost the trade and the true. I mean, look. Human beings are not perfect. And that's one of the things that I love so much about this movie is that this character of Amelia is not perfect. She's not the perfect mother. She does not have the perfect emotional response to the loss of her husband. And it is complicated. It is complicated, but to me, this is genre at its best, right? It's dealing with things that we as human beings don't want to talk about and are not comfortable talking about, so we tell them through the allegory or the metaphor of a monster or a demon or something else. It's a beautiful, beautiful film.
This is, I think, I agree, this is indeed the power of the horror genre, and we haven't really talked about Jennifer Kent by name, who directed this, and she knocked this out of the park. And what's really amazing is that it's really kind of a simple story.
Yes.
And yet she makes a lot of very smart decisions throughout the entire process. Just whoever it was, I know Jennifer Kent okayed it. I don't know if it was her production designer or if it was all her idea, who came up with, we should paint the interior of their house pastel black. It's not even gray, it's pastel black. It is just such an oppressive environment.
Yeah.
She is in such a deep, dark place the entire time. And even later on, when they're able to play with that a bit and sort of imply that things maybe are getting better, it's still not bright.
No.
They don't paint the walls white or anything like that. There's just some blues in there as well. There's a little bit more nuance.
And that's what I love too, is that, I am not going to dive into spoiler territory, but I do appreciate the fact that throughout the whole way, from beginning, middle, and end, it is not a fairy tale, roses, rainbows thing. It's a very human thing. The resolutions that we get in this film are human. Things are not perfect, but they can be better.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is so powerful about this movie.
There's one thing I didn't really notice until the second time I watched it, which is they talk about, real briefly, that Essie Davis's character before she had to take on some responsibilities, was a writer. And she does mention, and I did some children's things, just really off the cuff. And it's just she doesn't know where that book came from. Oftentimes her hands are covered in ink. There's a scene where she vomits up ink. This is just her. This is her. Every horrible thought she has that she should not be reveling in but cannot escape. The Babadook is fantastic in every single way. And see the Babadook.
Yeah, watch it, and also give yourself, look, this is another one where you need to pay attention. Put your phone away. Turn it off even.
Turn off the lights.
Turn off the lights and turn up the sound.
Oh my God, this killed my subwoofer.
The sound in this movie I love. I think that the sound design is extra creepy and really scary, and if you can have some good sound, do it.
Absolutely. What rating do you give the Babadook on our WTF scale?
I give this one a solid 9. I really, really love this movie, and I love it. I think I love it more as a drama than I do as a horror movie, but I love it both ways.
Yeah, I agree. I would say just someone who, speaking from my own experiences with anxiety and just really connected with it on a really powerful level, I give this one a 9.5. This is one of my favorite horror movies of the last long time. And I'm so glad we were able to talk about it.
Me too. Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. Happy Halloween. Go see the Babadook, and we'll see you next time.